friends. We are here once again on Fresh Take Culture and Comics. I am your host, Dan Freeman, aka The Danny Fresh. And you can find me on TikTok and the Twitters. Go follow me there. If you are new to us, welcome. Hit that follow, hit that subscribe, like, share, all the good stuff. No, really, it helps, and we're a new channel, and we really appreciate it. If you're here because you do follow me on TikTok, you know we are just 5 followers away, I believe, from our 800 follower giveaway. We're about, I think, 49 from our 200 follower giveaway here on YouTube. So I look forward to hitting those check marks and getting you guys some goodies. Listen, we're going to talk Sandman today. This is Friday, August 5th. The series just dropped today on Netflix, and we are not going to be talking about the series on Netflix today. This is actually just a conversation about the sort of cultural and historic importance of the Sandman comic book series, its place in comic history, and with all due respect to Alan Moore's work on The Watchmen and Swamp Thing, which I think made it possible for Sandman to exist. I think that Sandman is the single most important modern comic achievement, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why. And this won't be a really long one, but I think we've got some real nuggets for you guys here. Then we are certainly going to be covering the series. I've got a great guest who's going to be coming on this weekend, and we're going to be bringing down the first couple episodes, and then we're going to give everybody, a week and a half, 2 weeks to digest the whole series. They've all just dropped, and we'll do a full season review. The early buzz is great. I have not watched it. I very purposefully have not watched any of it before I did this because I didn't want to influence what I have to share now. Look, I don't know how to appropriately frame the comics landscape of 1988, which is when Sandman 1 came out. If you weren't sort of a fan of any existing through it at the time, but I'm going to give you some kind of context. So up until that point, while there had certainly been some critical acclaim of certain works of comic books and graphic novels, and we're going to talk about the terminology of graphic novels and how it often gets misused, much to Gaiman's chagrin on Sandman a little bit, and why that's important. But there's certainly been critical appeal, and Sandman came out under DC's Vertical label, which was sort of mature label that really kind of focused on a mature more for the horror edge. And Sandman was sort of billed, and is to a certain extent, as a modern horror tale. But up until that point, for I think majority of the public, when you saw for mature readers, often that meant specifically for sexual content or for horror content. It wasn't about complexity of subject matter, really. And certainly, we were still in an era where comics, broadly speaking, were dismissed as either kid stuff, fringe stuff, nerd stuff, niche, whatever. So Sandman both was a critical success, but also a financial one. It sold well and led to content creators in the comic space, frankly, having more sway as the decades went on. Notoriously, Gaiman said that if they were going to use, when he finished his run of 75 issues, that if DC tried to use those characters, even though they technically owned them, without his involvement, that he would jump ship and go to Marvel. And that threat was big enough, and Gaiman was a big enough of a sort of a creative star that it prevented DC for a very long time of using those characters. So, it had a resonance in that way as well. But more to the point, those of us reading in real time, it felt like you were being bathed in the fire of something new. And over the decades, a lot of times when things feel so of a moment, they just don't hold up. And Sandman holds up every beat for it. I mean, it's lost none of its fire. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this. So, on top of its ambition, and it is a very ambitious work, the craftsmanship of the storytelling of Gaiman is exceptional. I mean, he is one of the great modern storytellers. Um, issue 19, A Midsummer Night's Dream, was the first and I believe only comic to win the World Fantasy Award for Best Short Fiction. And again, to give you a sense of the landscape at the time, the award changed its rules afterwards, basically, so a comic couldn't win, right? It was still being pigeonholed. So when you think about what comics are now, they're essentially, gross domestic product, right? That just was not. There were cartoons, there were, the Superman movies. Historically, there have been some things, but still real fringe. Sandman is a linchpin in generating credibility for the form. And I say the form of comic books because that's what they were. People love saying graphic novels when they talk about the Sandman. And Gaiman's written graphic novels. But these were individual, single-issue comics on a 75-issue run. And Gaiman bristles when people refuse to call them that and call them graphic novels, because it's the attempt. Those are code words, right? Those are critical code words to dismiss comic books as being lesser, and that if they're graphic novels, somehow they're a higher art form. Gaiman wanted to be in comics. That's what he wanted his career to be. He wanted to be a comic book writer. Okay. Now he's a titanic talent. He's had success in novels, screen adaptations of his work, Coraline, American Gods, etc. And he's certainly written very good graphic novels that are widely acclaimed. But he loved comic books and treated them with a sort of respect that rarely they got, and then demanded that of his audience. And because of that, it really is a comic book story that was unlike anything before. He does not spoon feed the audience. He trusts the audience to come along with him. At the starting of the arc, you don't know who the Sandman is. You don't know what his background is. You don't know the story. You don't get an origin story. I mean, it unfolds itself over time, and becomes increasingly more complex as you see more angles and of understanding. But he trusts his audience with the complexity of a long form story that has nuance, that has ambiguity, that has pacing, that takes detours, and asks you to trust him, and you learn to trust him on that journey. It really was a ambitious attempt that has no precedent in the art form. But the thing that I think keeps it so relevant and has made this such a passionate fan base, and why I'm so excited for this show, and why I say everybody, I've been waiting 30 years for this show, and I am not alone. Is because in this complex, dense, highbrow story are incredibly accessible universalities. So I'm always blown away. Like, Sandman's one of those comics where you think it's your thing. It definitely is one of those. You think it's your thing. You so identify. It's such a story of feeling alienated. It's such a story of the outsider, which often appeals to those that feel marginalized on the fringe. And then I'm no matter who I talk to, I'm literally this year learned one of my best friends on the planet loves it. It's his favorite comic. We'd never spoken about it before. I don't think he's a big comic fan. People love this book from all walks of life. And this is because at its core, the story of Dream and the Endless, his sister Death, brother Destiny, Desire, Delirium, Despair. It's not just the big concept of them all, fascinating, fun stuff, cosmic meta stuff, great. But we all dream. We all desire. We all die. We all feel despair. It is a universally humanity accessible story. And yeah, I don't know, and probably isn't the line there. Because of that accessibility, it continues to resonate. And every new generation who finds it has the same path. And while generations change and sort of our marks of cultural touch points change, this comic continues to be born fresh for each new generation, because literally the endless, the timeless are just that. So huge high concept, beautiful writing, complex storytelling, gorgeous art. I mean, he worked with some of the greatest artists. But really, at its core, timeless stories of our dreams, our hopes, our successes, our failures, and personifying these, endless, metadimensional characters with foibles makes them even more relatable. Our protagonist, Sandman, Dream, Morpheus, is not flawless at all. In fact, his flaws are basically the center point of the entire story arc. So it makes it more appealing. There are things he does within it that are awful, that we condemn. And he learns to understand that. Death is, if you've read him, about as breakout of a star as you can get from a comic book. That's just weird. But it is her bluntness and actually her love and her support of her brother. So Death is comfort in this story. That's a third rail concept that we can shy away from, right? Delight, delirium used to be delight until she indulged too much. We can all relate to that, right? We've stepped maybe too far into the delight of something, found ourselves in a more problematic place on the other side. If not ourselves, certainly people in our lives. So a huge, gigantic, soaring story told in universal spanning, reality spanning ways, but also on the streets of London and New York and etc. With concepts we can all relate to, like Titanic figures at the same time, and making that all come together in 1988 for an art form that was generally regulated to the fringe, redefining what it meant to be for a mature audience. There's really no other achievement like it. There wasn't before, there hasn't been since. There are incredible works, incredible artists who have done fascinating stuff. Aforementioned Alan Moore, Frank Miller, what Jonathan Hickman has done over the last decade plus is really incredible. And we're going to do a Jonathan Hickman show. But as far as a singular work, the Sandman series is the most important modern comic in what it delivered, what it promised, what it delivered, what it inspired, and how it continues to resonate. And I am so very excited for the show, and I hope it delivers. I really, really, really want it to. And if not, I love these comics. It's just a mind melting, face melting reading experience. And if you haven't read them, I highly recommend it. I'm sure the series is going to have its own approach to things. I'm sure they're different enough. But yeah, Sandman, the most important modern comic in my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. Let me know if you think I'm right on, if you think I'm off. Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think is the most important modern comic, and if you have specific issues of Sandman that have resonated with you or thoughts about it, let me know. We are going to be back with a longer episode breaking down at least the first 2, maybe 3 episodes of Sandman on Netflix. I hope everybody enjoys it. We've certainly waited long enough. Subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. If you don't follow me on TikTok, go do that there. We have a good time. See you guys next time.